Good morning, everyone. Welcome at the Military Media Center. Glory to Ukraine, glory to Ukrainian heroes. 414 days of Ukrainian struggle and repulse to Russian aggression. This is Military Media Center, and I welcome you at our weekly briefing of the representative of the Security and Defense Forces of Ukraine. Today you're going to be briefed by Deputy Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Hanna Maliar, Deputy Head of the Main Operations Directorate of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Oleksii Hromov, Acting Director of Implementation Planning Department of the National Guard of Ukraine, Colonel Mykola Urshalovych. We're going to be briefed by the current situation on the contact line. After that, you will be able to ask some questions concerning the briefing. And now, please welcome Deputy Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Hanna Maliar. Good morning, dear colleagues. Good morning, everyone. We are starting our traditional weekly briefing of the Security and Defense Forces of Ukraine. We stay united on all front lines, including the informational one. 414 days of Ukrainian defense against large-scale invasion of the Russian Federation of Ukraine. I want to remind you that the war in Ukraine is ongoing since 2013. A year ago, on April 13, the Armed Forces of Ukraine engaged the flagship of the Russian Black Fleet, Moskva cruiser. The next day, Russian military warship went to its direction. The war against Ukraine is ongoing for 50 weeks or more than 9,500 hours. Our defenders continue to struggle and withstand Russian aggression in all front lines. Harsh and fierce battles are ongoing in the vicinity of Bakhmut because the Russian forces have concentrated their efforts in there. That is why we do the same in order to protect our borders. Mariinka and Avdiivka directions, as well as Liman directions, are the center of the ground zero of hostilities. Despite fierce battles, our warriors are fighting and don't let the enemy further invade. Despite large concentrations of elite forces in Bakhmut, namely Wagner groups, airborne forces, special forces, Russians still are not able to seize Bakhmut. Today, we can say that Russians are suffering significant losses, and despite the losses, they don't give up and trying to seize the city and take it over. Representative of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine will brief you about this in more detail. Despite from that, we still continue to perform training of our warriors. We negotiate with our partners on the increase of pressure on Russians and to increase our support to Ukraine. Ukraine is actively engaging in to hold accountable Russians for their actions, and our purpose is to have a special tribunal to sue Russians. And I want to remind you that we have to hold Russians and the Russian Federation accountable not only for their everyday actions but for their aggression. This is the primary source of aggression because other offenses and crimes are derived from that. We'll respond to the aggression, to the atrocities Russians are doing right now, the devastation of our land, leveling to the ground of our cities, destroying Ukrainian population. We'll respond for that. We'll respond with the criminal sentences and the tribunal against Russian aggression. The enemy has to know that we are not afraid of the enemy, and we'll fight till the end, till we win. Glory to everyone who is fighting for Ukraine and liberating our territories, and we are grateful to our people for that. We have some information from the main intelligence directorate that Russians intensified their measures to threaten and intimidate population on the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine. They are spreading phony information about negative implications of Ukrainian authorities coming back to their land and concerning the counter-offensive of Ukraine. In this way, Russians are trying to intimidate and threaten Ukrainians because of the Ukrainian authorities to come back to newly rebelated areas. At the same time, Russians are retreating to the temporarily occupied territories and to the Autonomous Republic of Crimea. At the same time, Russian command forcibly involved the local population to organize fortifications, and they were supervisors of armed Russian servicemen there. We also inform you on our victories of the Ministry of Defense on legal frontline. The Ministry of Defense is engaging in bringing back illegally seized properties. We are thorough in that. We are thorough to concerning fulfillment of obligations of our contractors, because we are sure and we know that our servicemen, our forces need to know about the responsible attitude of these contractors concerning their obligations. In any case, we address and appeal to court. The Supreme Court put an end to resume the rights of the Ministry of Defense on land area of up to 95 hectares in Khmelnytsky region. So this land has been returned to the Ministry of Defense because it has been illegally seized before. The Northern Appeal Court approved the decision of Agricultural Court of Kiev to disapprove the decision of the communal facilities in Kiev for illegal use of land area of up to 3 hectares, which is in Kiev. This area is on Vitradny Avenue Street. This land has been also illegally seized by the decision of the Kiev City Council. Now it has been brought back to the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. The Supreme Court has decided and had a decision to bring back the immovable property of non-residential area in Lviv, which has been brought back to the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. Now, as for the imposition of payments for illegal and not accurate compliance with obligations, the Supreme Court had a positive decision on the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine concerning 30 million hryvnias because of the improper fulfillment of obligations. These obligations concern the violation of terms concerning the supply of oil and other oil products, aviation gas, for special purpose material. At the same time, the prepayment has been the decision on the prepayment has been approved concerning the operational work of Design Bureau concerning the state order of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. And now these issues are going to be settled in courts. We also protect our interest of the Ministry of Defense. Every day we have new decisions of the court concerning the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Deputy Minister, for your information and your briefing. And now, please welcome Brigadier General Oleksii Hromov. Good morning, everyone, dear guests. Given the lack of threat concerning internal stability, the Kremlin is continuing its invasive war concerning Ukraine. At the same time, experience bravery of our soldiers, as well as a perfect use of weapons and equipment provided by partners, has decreased the level of Russian capacities. And now it will force Russians to think it over and think one more time about further offensive actions in Ukraine. We forecast that in spring and summer, the Russian forces will try to build up their units and try to form strategic reserves and move it up to Ukrainian borders. In order to increase their capacities, Russians and the Kremlin's regime is trying to prevent protests and rallies in highly populated areas of Russia. In order to increase the number of contract servicemen, the enemy has announced the call-up of up to 400,000 of personnel. At the same time, they planned to perform conscription service of up to 147,000 of personnel. Thus, despite the decrease of social-economical situation in Russia and agitation and propaganda campaigns, the Russian population perceives and realizes that they will now have any chance rather than be brought back home in the black bag. Military enlistment and recruitment centers cannot fulfill their plans concerning the conscription. The Kremlin is not trying to put up with the reality and seize the war. Instead, they are trying to find new ways to engage population and force them to join the armed forces, thus remanning and to feel casualties. As for now, they have made decisions to have court sessions in order to sue people who don't want to serve. For this end, they suggested to involve foreign citizens, Tajiks from Uzbekistan and other nationalities, to join the armed forces of the Russian Federation. In addition, on the territory of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea, we see the active build-up of alternative private military companies such as Wagner's. However, our partners can say that in short term, such companies will not have any scale and success. However, we do not have to underestimate the aggressor. Given its mobilization resources, Russia is able to completely provide the armed forces with personnel to wage a war on attrition. As for now,
The Bakhmut direction is the most difficult one. The enemy is trying to conduct offensive actions in the vicinity of Bakhmut, Bogdanivka, and Ivanivka, and to encircle the city. In order to increase their offensive potential, the enemy units and material have been redeployed to Bakhmut and Avdiivka. Every day, the enemy is using lots of weapons and equipment against us. Thus, during the last 2 weeks, the enemy suffered losses of up to 4,500 Wagner personnel and regular personnel of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. Mobilized personnel in some units of the Russian Federation do not want to involve and be engaged in hostilities. We can say that the enemy is trying to punish them in a very crucial way, especially the evaders and draft dodgers. In the vicinity of Liman direction, in order to advance to the administrative border of Luhansk region, the enemy conducts offensive actions and trying to push back our forces to the right bank of the Zherebets River. The enemy intensified operational and tactical units as well as army aviation concerning the position of our forces. At the same time, Russian servicemen stationing in the vicinity of Kremina are depressed because of the possible advance of the Ukrainian armed forces and the cancelled vacations. They complain in the phone calls that they have just rifles, and in case of Ukrainian advance, they will not be able to withstand their positions. We also can say that they try to save up their ammunition. In Mariinka and Avdiivka directions, the enemy does not give up, trying to seize Mariinka and Avdiivka. Every day we have from 20 to 40 attempts to perform and conduct assault actions. In Vuhledar direction, after failed attempts to offense, the enemy is trying to shell our positions in the vicinity of Vodyane, Vuhledar, and Prechestivka. As a result of the considerable and significant losses, mobilized personnel and Wagner groups have been redeployed there. In Zaporizhia and Kherson directions, the enemy continues to shell our positions and inflicts missile and bomb attacks on civilian installations in the vicinity of Kherson and Zaporizhia. In several directions, the enemy reinforces its positions with anti-tank assets. To destabilize the situation and prevent maneuver of our troops, the enemy continues to preserve and to have their presence in Bryansk, Kursk, and Belgorodsk regions. On the territory of the not recognized Transnistrian Republic, they also have their contingents. We can also see the redeployment of Russian units that previously have been trained on the Russian training ranges, as well as ranges on the territory of Belarus. Since the beginning of this month, Russia inflicted and attacked 7 missile strikes and more than 100 artillery shellings. At the same time, in Bryansk, Kursk, Belgorod regions, the enemy continues to build up and have mine obstacles in the vicinity of the state border. Given the propaganda and intimidation of their population, we can say that they are going to use lots of UAVs and rocket artillery against Ukrainian infrastructure in the vicinity of the borders. In Belgorod region, the Russian bodyguards are constantly losing their property and vehicles. Thus, on March 30, they lost a UAV with a cost of up to 3 million Russian rubles. The threat of massive missile strike on the territory of Ukraine is still present. There are and ready to use cruise missile carriers and cruise missile air and sea-based carriers are on the airfields on the territory of Russia and Belarus. It's worth mentioning that given our data, in June this year, Russian Federation will try to perform serial production of Kh-50 strategic air-based cruise missiles. It will enable them to intensify missile attacks. At the same time, according to information since February 2022, Russia has depleted their the 50% of their anti-aircraft missiles, and at least 8,000 of surface-to-surface missiles. At the same time, given the current level of production, Russia will not be able to replenish its reserves and supplies in a midterm. During hostilities, the enemy is suffering heavy losses. Thus, for the last week, Russian occupation forces constantly lose from 400 to 750 killed personnel, as well as injured. The defense forces of Ukraine continue to perform defensive and stabilization measures in the vicinity of Pridnestrovsky, Kherson and Volyn regions. They also perform active positional defense in Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia operational areas. Thanks to our partners, we man and re-equip our units with foreign weapons and equipment. We also continue to perform and form our advance brigade. Russian war of invasion against Ukraine is the main center of gravity and attention of the global community. Global changes and threats caused by large-scale aggression change the security situation of not only several countries but the whole world at all. Despite any forecast, hardship and constant threat, the armed forces of Ukraine repulse the overwhelming Russian forces. Ukrainian troops have become the shield for democracy and the civilized world. And democracy and independence and key values of Ukrainians are the basic concept of Ukrainian statehood and what is fought every day. Every minute, Ukrainian forces bring our victory closer. Every moment, our hearts rate for Ukraine. Believe in the armed forces of Ukraine and in our victory. Thank you, Brigadier General, for the information. And now, I welcome representative of the National Guard of Ukraine, Colonel Mykola Urshalovych, and he will brief you on the role of the National Guard. Good morning, dear colleagues. Good morning, everyone. National Guard forces continue to perform their tasks as part of defense forces. The main efforts of the National Guard are focused on participation of defensive actions in the vicinity of Slobozhansk, Donetsk and Tavriiskyi operational areas, namely in deterring the enemy advance in Kupyansk, Slovyansk, Avdiivka, Novopavlivsk and Zaporizhzhia directions. Stabilization measures on Volyn, Polissa, Siversk, Basarabsky and Pivdeno-Buzhsky regions. Continue measures for anti-amphibious assault in the vicinity of the Black Sea and the Pivdeno-Buzhsky area, as well as participation in territorial defense in the southwestern areas. The warriors of the 4th Special Purpose Brigade, named after Sergeant Mikhailchuk, performed successful actions in the vicinity of Ozaryanivka. Over the last week, they destroyed up to 25 personnel, 2 mortar with their crews, 2 vehicles and 2 armored fighting vehicles. Personnel of the 1st Presidential Brigade, named after Petro Doroshenko, continued to perform actions in the vicinity of Bilogorivka. As a result of the actions, 70 enemy personnel and 1 mortar with a crew have been destroyed. Thanks to brave actions of the 14th Special Purpose Brigade, named after Ivan Bogun, our units not only hold their positions in the vicinity of Spirna, but also destroy the enemy. Over the last week, 60 enemy personnel have been destroyed. The most fierce battles are fought in the Serebryansky area, where the enemy is trying to send their personnel. They spare no effort to use their forces as cannon fodder. The personnel of the 31st Public Protection Brigade and 5th Assault Brigade repulsed the enemy advance and destroyed up to 150 personnel and 3 enemy vehicles. These units also destroyed the enemy in the vicinity of Novokalinova and Velika Novosilovka. The National Guard personnel in the vicinity of southern Odessa operational areas performed their actions and destroyed the enemy in the vicinity of Zaporizhzhia and Gulay-Pole directions. Units of the Special Purpose Units continue to perform search and attack and counter-sabotage actions in the vicinity of Avdiivka. In the vicinity of this area, up to 35 enemy personnel and 2 vehicles have been destroyed. National Guard reconnaissance units detected 250 enemy targets. The majority of these targets have been destroyed by the defense forces. Despite harsh and severe weather conditions, the air reconnaissance groups of the 27th Pecheresk Brigade detected and engaged 2 tanks, 1 artillery system and 12 armored fighting vehicles. National Guard artillery units performed fire support in Liman and Zaporizhzhia directions. During the week, they performed 300 combat tasks and destroyed up to 90 personnel, 2 vehicles, ammunition depot, and destroyed 4 artillery systems. Air defense units of the 50th Regiment, named after Semen Vysochan, downed the Lancet UAV on April 6. The mobile electronic warfare group of the 11th Brigade, named after Mikhailo Grushevsky, intercepted the enemy drones. National Guard aviation performed 12 sorties to engage the enemy. During stabilization measures, the engineer units continued to support Ukrenergo teams to repair power lines in Kherson region. In the vicinity of Duchane, 2.5 hectares of terrain have been surveyed and 15 IEDs have been disposed of. In addition,
since April 11, the demining team has started to perform its actions. During territorial defense measures, we continue to perform safety and protection task. For this task, we allocate 300 guard duties. For this purpose, we perform protection of 33 ministers, departments, and state administrations. During the martial law conditions, National Guard personnel maintains measures concerning curfew and duty guards in the vicinity of 32 settlements of the state. For this purpose, we allocate 1,000 of personnel. We also perform actions on entry and exit clearance regime, document screening, etc., concern especially search of vehicles and luggage at checkpoints. We also protect 99 regional and local facilities. For this purpose, we allocate 3,000 people. The National Guard also participated in 60 counter-sabotage activities on the territory of 10 regions of Ukraine. For this purpose, we allocated 2,000 of servicemen. During these measures, we detained 1,909 people, including 74 for criminal cases. During these measures, we seized fire, cold weapons, ammunition, grenade, flares, about 500 grams of explosive and more than 1 kilogram of drugs. We also trying to engage in bringing our servicemen back from captivity. We released POWs, and those who have been released are being processed and treated by professional psychologists. At the end, we talk about assault advance guards. Another brigade named Khartia has been added to the general composition of our advance guards. It will be the 9th Advance Guard Brigade and the 7th Advance Guard Brigade of the National Guard. After the month of establishment of this volunteer unit in April 2022, its servicemen and warriors liberated the Ruska Lozova village in Kharkiv region. Currently, we have admission process for this Khartia brigade. You can join it at central centers or through internet. Everyone can join it. Every Ukrainian who wants to bring our victory closer to the end. We'll win together, and thank you for your attention. Thank you, Colonel, for your briefing of the National Guard of Ukraine. Now we have a couple of minutes so our journalists can ask questions concerning the briefing. We have the mics here, so one question per mass media representative, please. I'm Vitaly Litvin, Armia Inform. I have the question to Deputy Minister. At the beginning of your briefing, you mentioned that Ukraine is intensifying its work with the partners concerning special tribunal, concerning investigation of war crimes. I want to ask you about the details. So the President of Ukraine is emphasizing concerning the genocide manifestations of the Russian forces. Can you say anything on that? The four war crimes are provided by the Rome Court concerning the genocide. it's obvious that in this situation we have to seize the opportunity of the international courts, because we obviously can say about the devastation and destruction of Ukrainian nation among relations with Russians, and it's very important for us to hold Russia accountable for these crimes. But I also want to remind you that the first and the key crime is the aggression, because the other crimes are derived from this aggression. And the whole world has to realize that all instruments and tools created to counter such wars are not operational. They're just not working. Since the Nuremberg process, these tools are not working, because we see the wars going on every day, and that is why the Russian-Ukrainian war has to become a starting point where the common political will of the whole world will exist to punish aggressor for its crimes, including genocide and crimes against humanity. And that is why it is an effective tool for other to be known for aggressors such Putin, because there are also many dictators now, and they can just see that they are can do and act freely. Do we have any other questions? Maureen, this is Suspilna. I had a question to Deputy Minister. It relates to the video posted yesterday concerning the beheading, decapitating of Ukrainian servicemen. As soon as we find out the person, will let you know who it was. There were also another video of two other servicemen beheaded, decapitated, and it was shot. The video was shot in Bakhmut direction. Do you know anything about that? All cases and all videos posted on the internet are being studied. Our uniformed structures with technical expertise are examining and studying these videos, because these videos are the matter of concern of the whole state of Ukraine. So we'll try to identify the citizens, the warriors of the servicemen of the armed forces of Ukraine. So if we so as not to spread phony information about the servicemen, we are trying to keep it quiet and identify the personality of these servicemen. Is the Ministry of Defense cooperating with the foreign agencies concerning the tribunal? We have already stated that Ukrainian state is cooperating with the International Court, and it's very important to work with all institutions. It's obvious that the armed forces of Ukraine and not the Ministry of Defense are the first to become those who see the crimes and can gather evidence for that. I want to say that there are 17 sentences of the foreign and Ukrainian courts. If you have no questions, I would like to thank you to our speakers. This is the Military Media Center, the only information platform of the Security and Defense Forces of Ukraine. Thank you.